The wind howled through the concrete canyons of the city, carrying sharp needles of ice that bit into anyone brave enough to be outside. It was late December, and the city was glowing with festive holiday lights. People wrapped in expensive heavy coats rushed past the shop windows, carrying colorful bags of gifts for their families. They were heading to warm houses, hot dinners, and comfortable beds. I had none of those things. At 45 years old, my life had shrunk to a single wooden bench in the corner of a quiet city park. 2 years ago, a sudden factory closure took my job, and a medical emergency took my savings. Without a safety net, I quickly lost my apartment. Now, the city called me homeless, but I just felt invisible. People walked past me every day without looking at my face. To them, I was just a part of the cold landscape. On this particular night, the temperature dropped well below freezing. I pulled my thin, faded blue blanket tighter around my shoulders. My boots had holes in the soles, and I could no longer feel my toes. I blew on my hands, watching my breath form thick white clouds in the freezing air. Just stay awake, I whispered to myself. In this kind of extreme cold, falling asleep on a park bench could mean never waking up again. The park was mostly empty now. The families and couples had all gone inside to escape the blizzard. The street lamps cast a pale, flickering yellow light onto the rapidly accumulating snow. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the whistle of the wind through the bare, frozen branches of the trees. I closed my eyes for just a moment, trying to imagine the warmth of a fireplace. But my thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a strange, quiet sound. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't an animal. It sounded like a soft, muffled sob. I opened my eyes and looked around the dark park. At first, I saw nothing but empty paths and white snow. But then, near the frozen stone fountain about 20 yards away, I saw a flash of bright color against the white drifts. It was a pink winter jacket. I pushed my frozen blankets aside and forced my stiff legs to move. Every step felt like walking on broken glass, but the sound of the crying grew louder, clearer, and more desperate. When I reached the fountain, my heart completely stopped. Sitting in the snow, leaning against the cold stone, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. She was wearing a bright pink jacket, but her hood had fallen back, and her blonde hair was covered in snowflakes. Her small cheeks were bright red from the biting frost, and tears were freezing on her face. She was shivering so violently that her teeth were chattering loudly. "Hello there," I said gently, kneeling in the snow a few feet away so I wouldn't scare her. I made sure to keep my voice soft and calm. "Are you okay, little one? Where is your mommy or daddy?" The girl looked up at me with wide, terrified blue eyes. She didn't run away. She was too cold to move. She just reached her tiny purple-gloved hands toward me. "Cold," she sobbed, her voice incredibly weak. "Mummy went to get help. Car broke. Cold." I looked out toward the main road beyond the park. Far in the distance, I could see the hazard lights of a car blinking through the thick snowstorm. But it was completely abandoned. The mother must have walked down the highway to find a gas station, completely unaware that her little girl had opened the car door and wandered into the dark park, getting lost in the blinding blizzard. There was no time to search for the mother, and there was no time to wait for help. The little girl was entering the dangerous stages of hypothermia. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes were starting to drift shut. Without hesitating, I pulled off my own heavy, though worn-out winter coat. Underneath, I only had a thin sweater, and the freezing air instantly hit my skin like a physical blow. But I didn't care about the cold anymore. I wrapped my big coat entirely around her small body, lifting her gently into my arms. I pulled her close to my chest, using my own body heat to shield her from the howling wind. "I've got you," I whispered, rocking her back and forth as I walked back toward my bench where my extra blankets were. "You're going to be okay, I promise." I carried her into the small wooden public shelter near the park entrance. It didn't have heating, but it blocked the freezing wind. I sat on the concrete floor, holding the little girl tightly in my lap. I wrapped my blue blanket over my coat, creating a small insulated cocoon for her. She was still shivering, so I began to rub her arms and legs gently through the layers to keep her blood circulating. "Let's play a game to stay awake, okay?" I said, trying to sound cheerful despite the fact that my own jaw was shaking uncontrollably from the cold. "My name is Leo. What is your name?" "Lily," she whispered softly. Her eyes were heavy, constantly trying to close. "That's a beautiful name, Lily." "Like the flower," I said quickly, tapping her nose gently to keep her attention. "You have to stay awake for me, Lily. Can you tell me your favorite color?" "Pink," she breathed, her head resting against my shoulder. "Pink is a great color. Look at your jacket. You look like a little winter angel." I kept talking, telling her fictional stories about a magical summer garden where the sun was always shining, the grass was always warm, and there was never any snow. I talked about warm apple pies, hot cocoa with giant marshmallows, and running through fields of green grass. As I spoke, I felt my own body temperature dropping rapidly. Without my coat, the freezing air was draining my energy. My fingers became completely numb, and a dangerous drowsiness began to cloud my mind. It would be so easy to just close my eyes and sleep, but every time I felt myself slipping into the dark, I felt Lily's small, fragile heart beating against my chest. She was relying on me. If I gave up, this innocent child would not survive the night. "Stay awake, Leo," I scolded myself in a harsh whisper. "Keep her warm. Just keep her warm." For 2 long, agonizing hours, I sat in the dark shelter, fighting the blizzard with nothing but my own determination and a thin cotton sweater. I sang childhood songs, I repeated my stories, and I held Lily as close as humanly possible, giving her every single ounce of my warmth. Around midnight, the flashing red and blue lights of police cars illuminated the snow outside the shelter. I heard desperate voices shouting through the storm, "Lily! Lily! Where are you?" With the last bit of energy left in my body, I stood up, cradling Lily tightly. I stumbled out of the wooden shelter into the blinding snow, my legs trembling violently. "Here!" I tried to shout, but my throat was so dry and frozen that the sound came out as a weak rasp. "We are over here!" A police officer's flashlight cut through the darkness, hitting my face. "Over here! I found them!" the officer yelled. Suddenly, a frantic woman in a heavy jacket ran past the officer, slipping in the snow as she rushed toward me. "My baby! Oh my God, Lily!" I carefully lowered the wrapped bundle into the mother's arms. The moment the weight left my hands, my legs finally gave out. I collapsed into the deep snowdrift, my body completely exhausted and freezing. As the medical team rushed toward me with warm orange blankets, the last thing I saw before passing out was Lily, safely crying in her mother's arms. looking back at me with wide, curious blue eyes. I woke up to the sound of a rhythmic beeping and the incredible sensation of absolute warmth. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the bright, clean light of a hospital room. For a moment, I was confused. There was no wind. There was no snow. I was lying in a real bed with clean white sheets, and a warm automated blanket was wrapped around my body. A doctor in a white coat stepped into the room, checking a monitor. When he saw me moving, he smiled warmly. "Welcome back, Leo," the doctor said gently. "You gave us quite a scare. You had severe hypothermia when the paramedics brought you in last night. If you hadn't been found when you were, you wouldn't have made it through the morning." Is the little girl okay?" I asked, my voice hoarse and raspy. The doctor's smile widened. "She is perfectly fine. Thanks entirely to you. You wrapped her so well in your own coat that she only suffered minor chills. You saved her life, Leo, and her family has been waiting outside this door since last night to thank you." The doctor walked over and opened the heavy wooden door to the hospital room. A tall man in a sharp business suit and the frantic mother from the park stepped inside. The man was holding the hand of little Lily, who was looking bright, healthy, and completely recovered. She was holding a small teddy bear. The mother rushed to the side of my bed, tears instantly streaming down her face. She took my rough, calloused hand in both of her warm hands. "Thank you," she sobbed openly. "Thank you for saving my daughter. I am Sarah, and this is my husband, Thomas. We can never, ever repay you for what you did." Thomas stepped forward, his expression deeply serious and filled with an immense respect. He extended his hand, and I shook it weakly. "Leo," Thomas said, his voice strong but emotional. "The police told us everything. You gave her your only coat in a sub-zero blizzard. You risked your own life for a child you didn't even know. A man with a heart like yours should never have to suffer on a park bench. This night changed everything." I looked at the beautiful family standing before me, and for the first time in 2 years, the freezing cold inside my chest began to melt away. The hospital bed was a luxury I hadn't experienced in years. For 3 days, Thomas and Sarah visited me every morning, bringing fresh fruit and books. Lily would sit on the edge of the bed showing me her coloring books and talking about her favorite cartoons. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt valued. On the 4th morning, the doctor entered with a clipboard, a pleased smile on her face. "Well, Leo, your vitals are completely stable and the frostbite on your fingers is healed beautifully. You are ready to be discharged today." My heart instantly sank into my stomach. The warm blankets, the hot meals, the safety, it was all coming to an end. I nodded slowly, looking down at my rough hands. "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate everything you've done." "Where will you go, Leo?" the doctor asked gently, knowing my situation. "Back to the streets," I thought to myself, though I didn't want to say it aloud. I just shrugged my shoulders. "I'll manage. I always do." Before the doctor could reply, the door swung open and Thomas stepped inside, carrying a large, heavy paper bag. He must have overheard our conversation. "He isn't going back to the streets, Doctor," Thomas said firmly, stepping toward my bed with a confident smile. He placed the bag at the bedside table. "Leo, I bought these for you. Change into them. We are leaving together." I opened the bag and found a brand new set of clothes. A thick wool sweater, sturdy winter pants, insulated socks, and a heavy, high-quality winter coat. that felt incredibly warm to the touch. There was also a pair of expensive leather boots with thick, solid soles. Thomas, I can't accept this, I stammered, feeling a wave of pride and embarrassment. You don't owe me anything. Leo, you saved my daughter's life, Thomas said, placing a firm, warm hand on my shoulder. A new set of clothes is nothing compared to that. Please put them on. Sarah and Lily are waiting for us in the car. For the first time in 2 years, I stripped off my tattered, thin clothes and put on garments that actually kept the winter chill away. When I tied the laces of the new boots, I felt a strange sense of dignity returning to my bones. I stood up, walked out of the hospital, and stepped into a completely new chapter of my life. Instead of driving back toward the loud, crowded center of the city, Thomas drove his modern SUV toward the quiet, wealthy suburbs near the northern hills. The snow was still thick on the ground, but the roads were perfectly cleared. We pulled up to a beautiful historic property surrounded by ancient oak trees covered in glittering frost. In the center of the property stood a massive, elegant house. But Thomas didn't park there. He drove down a long, winding side path that led to a magnificent glass greenhouse. Attached to the side of the greenhouse was a charming, small stone cottage with smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Sarah and Lily got out of the car, smiling broadly. Lily ran over and grabbed my hand. "Look, Leo! This is your new house." I looked at Thomas, completely speechless. My jaw dropped. Thomas, what is this? I am a real estate developer, Leo, but my true passion is this botanical property, Thomas explained, gesturing toward the massive glass structure. I collect and grow rare winter flora, but since my business expanded, I haven't had the time to care for them properly. The greenhouse has been neglected, and this cottage has been sitting empty for over a year. Sarah stepped forward, holding a shiny brass key. She placed it gently into my palm. We want you to live here, Leo. It is fully furnished. The pantry is stocked with food, and the heating is already turned on. This isn't charity. We need someone we can trust to manage this property. I don't know anything about rare flowers, I whispered, my voice trembling as I looked at the key in my hand. You don't need to know everything yet, Thomas smiled. You showed patience, care, and a protective instinct on the coldest night of the year. Those are the exact qualities a good gardener needs. I will teach you the rest. You will earn a monthly salary, and this cottage is yours for as long as you want it. Walking inside the cottage felt like stepping into a dream. There was a plush sofa, a warm fireplace, a clean kitchen, and a soft bed with thick blankets. That night, as the wind howled outside, I didn't have to fight to stay awake. I closed my eyes and slept in absolute peace, knowing I was safe. The next 3 months passed in a beautiful flurry of activity. Working in the greenhouse was hard physical labor, but it was incredibly rewarding. Thomas spent his weekends with me, patiently teaching me how to measure soil acidity, regulate the complex automated heating systems, and cultivate delicate winter orchids. I discovered that I possessed a natural talent for working with plants. My rough, calloused hands, which had spent years handling factory machinery and surviving the harsh elements, were surprisingly gentle with the fragile green shoots. As I worked, my body began to change. The gaunt, exhausted look on my face disappeared, replaced by a healthy color from regular meals and purposeful labor. I cut my long, unkempt hair and shaved my rough beard. When I looked in the bathroom mirror each morning, I finally recognized the man looking back at me. Lily became my most frequent visitor. Every afternoon after school, she would run down the stone path to the greenhouse, her pink jacket bright against the snow. She loved to help me water the plants using a tiny green watering can I bought for her. "Look, Leo, the flower is waking up," she chirped one afternoon, pointing to a beautiful white rose that was just beginning to bloom under the glass roof. "Just like us, Lily," I said gently, kneeling beside her and wiping a bit of soil from her cheek. "With enough warmth and care, everything can bloom again." The local community began to notice the transformation of the property as well. Neighbors would stop by to purchase winter bouquets, and I found myself chatting casually with them, no longer feeling like an invisible ghost on a park bench. I was Leo, the estate gardener. I had a name, a purpose, and a community. However, the road to a new life is rarely completely smooth. One cold Tuesday afternoon in March, I had to drive Thomas's old pickup truck into the city center to purchase specialized fertilizer from a large agricultural supplier. As I drove past the familiar downtown streets, a sudden wave of anxiety hit me. I saw the familiar street corners, the local soup kitchens, and the cold concrete steps where I used to hide from the rain. The memories of my time on the streets felt incredibly close, like a shadow waiting to pull me back down. While waiting at a red light near the city park, I looked out the window and noticed a man huddled on the very same wooden bench where I had spent that freezing December night. He was wrapped in a thin, tattered gray blanket, his shoulders shaking from the biting wind. People walked past him rapidly, ignoring his existence entirely. My heart ached with a profound, painful recognition. That was me just a few months ago. Without thinking, I parked the truck on the side of the road. I walked into a nearby cafe and bought 2 large cups of hot coffee and 2 thick, warm sandwiches. I walked into the park, the snow crunching under my new leather boots, and approached the bench. "Hello, friend," I said gently, kneeling slightly just as I had done with Lily. "It's a cold day. Would you like something warm to eat?" The man looked up, his eyes filled with the same exhaustion and distrust that I used to carry every day. He hesitated, then reached out his trembling hands to accept the food. "Thank you," he muttered hoarsely. "Keep fighting," I said softly, putting a $20 bill into his hand. "Don't lose hope. The winter doesn't last forever." As I walked back to the truck, I realized that saving Lily hadn't just changed my life. It had given me a responsibility. I couldn't change the whole world, but I could make sure that I never forgot the people who were still trapped in the cold. By the time June arrived, the snow had completely melted, revealing a vibrant, lush landscape. The Blackwood Estate greenhouse was thriving, filled with thousands of colorful flowers that supplied local shops across the region. To celebrate the arrival of summer and the success of the garden, Thomas and Sarah organized a large neighborhood gathering on the estate lawns. Tables were covered in white linen, filled with delicious food, fresh lemonade, and beautiful floral arrangements that I'd grown myself. During the height of the party, Thomas stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming today," Thomas said, his arm wrapped around Sarah, while Lily stood beside them, holding her favorite teddy bear. As many of you know, this past winter was incredibly difficult for our family. We almost lost our greatest treasure, Lily, to a terrible blizzard. But a true hero risked everything to save her. Thomas looked across the lawn, his eyes locking onto mine. "Leo, please step forward." The crowd clapped warmly as I walked up, feeling a bit shy but incredibly proud. "Leo didn't just save our daughter," Thomas continued, his voice thick with emotion. He brought life back to this entire property. He transformed a neglected greenhouse into a sanctuary of beauty. He reminds us that dignity, compassion, and kindness are the most valuable things a human being can possess. Leo, you are no longer just our gardener. You are a permanent part of our family. The neighbors cheered, and Lily ran forward, throwing her small arms around my legs. "I love you, Leo," she whispered. I lifted her into my arms, looking around at the smiling faces, the warm sunshine, and the beautiful blooming garden. The cold bench in the park felt like a lifetime ago. The winter angel had saved me, proving that a single act of kindness can echo through the darkness and completely rewrite a person's destiny. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Storyline English. See you next time.